Hola amigos, bienvenidos. Welcome back to La Vida Verde podcast. I'm your host Matthew Human, and today my guest is Bradley Scott Farmer. Bradley is a homesteader originally from Sitka, Alaska. He's an ecological land developer. He's one of the original members of our community here, Tacotal Colectivo, and he's also the founder and proprietor of the Machu Campu Retreat Center in La Libertad, right here in the Machuca Valley. So it's going to be a great show, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, welcome, Bradley. Welcome to
Thanks.
the La Vida Verde podcast.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been up here.
Thanks for coming. So as I mentioned, Brad, you're a homesteader. You grew up in Sitka, Alaska, right?
hmm
And that is probably what brought you here. I mean, Brad, you were the first member of Tacotal that came here on the land. You were the first one, like in the rain, sleeping in tents, like like
Yeah.
when nobody else would live here.
Yeah.
Bradley, you were here.
It seemed to be I got cast in that role. Yeah, I was like, oh, no one else is going to do this.
So how did that happen?
Well, I think when we all got together and like we came down after a few of us came down after Burning Man. Lewis Fox, Mafita Marife, who else? Christian, Stephen. We all collided on this land. We walked around, we looked at it, and then I stayed a few days, just staying on the land in the September of that year was 2000. That was 2007 when we came and looked at it in September, and it was raining like, oh my god, it was raining so crazy. And I slept in various places on the land, under with a hammock and a piece of clear plastic for
before
4 days. For four
before
days,
before
yeah.
the land was even bought.
Oh yeah, before it was bought and before trails were cut, it was dense, dense.
So what brought you guys together? Like what was the original like you said you and Christian and Mary Faye and Steven, like
Burning Man,
you
basically.
all met at Burning Man?
Yeah, I mean, we met. That's where we got to know each other, all of us. That's where we got to work out the kinks of hanging out with each other and going,
Hmm.
oh yeah, these are the people I want to be in cooperation with. This is because we were faking it, we were doing it a couple weeks a year, doing community, and we were always,
At Burning Man.
yeah, we were always like, we'd joke that was our address, wherever our street address at Burning Man was, but we were aching for way more reality because it's so temporary. It's so,
So the idea was to bring the Burning Man camp to a land base.
uh-huh.
But weren't in you had something with like Alana and like before that you guys were looking for
We
land
Yeah, yeah, and
in
well, it was
Oregon.
here, that same group and various combos. We looked in Oregon when we looked in Baja pretty seriously. I looked at lots of lots there, and I would write back, and that was just too sharky and crazy. Mexico's very tricky
Hmm.
place to be buying land, and then Stephen was always wanting us to come down to Costa Rica, and some of us did, but we never wanted to live at Punta Mona in the swamp and
Talking
stuff.
about Stephen Brooks,
Yeah,
the founder of Punta Mona, and also the one who
yeah, many
really
things. Yeah,
he's like the
he's the
one
spark. He's the spark.
he's
He
the
ignites.
spark
He
for all
ignites things.
of us.
And then there's people like me that come along and stick, or like Rob at Sanctuario. There's a role for people who come and make it stick. Yeah.
What was it when you got here that you were like, this is the
Uh
spot? Because when
huh.
you got here, and some of our viewers don't know this, but this is a big growing area that is maybe to new people that come here now, you wouldn't even notice it, but like this was pure jungle.
Oh yeah.
This
Like
was
this,
pure jungle. There was
we
no
couldn't walk it.
neighbors. There was nowhere to
This is
go. There's
22 hectares of dense brush because it had been parts of it had been cleared and farmed a little with there were a few handfuls of fruit trees around. There was probably places where they had cows and it was more open in the past long ago, and and then the owner had been sick the last like 7 8 years of his life, so it was abandoned by the time we even set foot on here. It maybe had been abandoned 10 years, completely abandoned.
right, 10
So
years.
10 years here is dense. Tacotal is the name of underbrush or the pioneer species that grow up quickly
Hmm.
upon, when you just have land regenerating itself.
Hmm.
And so that's why we took our name from that, because we saw ourselves as, oh, we're Tacotal, we're pioneer species
We're
coming
the
in and
pioneer
to
species.
make something happen here.
Right.
And but man, 10 years of abandoned stuff means it's so dense. It's not even like a old growth forest, because old growth forest has space, right, and airflow and a lot of
Uh-huh.
layers to the canopy. No, this is just dense. This is
Right.
impossible to walk
Right.
through here.
I
There was
remember
like a
when
trail
I
and like,
first got here, it was like
yeah,
you had trails. By the time I got here, there
there
was
was some
trails
trails.
and there was like little spots open, but it was
You came
very
at the
thick.
beginning of year 2, I think, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
beginning of
And
year.
then
Actually,
there
I
was a
came
little bit of work.
and visited the year
Oh,
before when
yeah.
I came in here and Steve, I came up with Steven and you and Sharon were hanging out at the kitchen. You had a kitchen made. You had a mango
Yeah.
or at least a mango slab table
Right.
with a
It's
bunch of
still there.
mangoes on it.
Yeah.
It's still there, yeah.
Yeah.
And well that's so cool, man. I mean, I think about those days. I'm like I have many memories of that, but
Yeah, it was
um
a rough time at the beginning. And I was the only one. I was just cut out for it. I had no partner. I had no career other than carpentry in the States, and which is just, I just did work on and off, when I could. And
and you
and then
grew up
I
homesteading,
I
right?
grew up, yeah, yeah, definitely. Like and building our own house, and and being in the wilderness all the time and
Like
camping
in Alaska.
in Alaska.
Like what was I mean,
Yeah.
like, your parents would
Oh
just
yeah,
go
so this
find
is easier. This is easier, We would squat. We would make places out in the deep wilderness, squatting and make cabins and stuff, and hang out and make summer camps where we would, just smoke and dry fish and stuff like that. And
it.
so like, yeah, to me it was, and I was also a little bit younger. Like I think I look back right now, and I go, wow, I wouldn't want to relive the early days of Tacotal all over. Like I'm gotten a little soft. Like I have electricity.
No, but it's the same for all of us. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like it's the same.
yeah,
Like you do it when you have the energy to
yeah,
do it, and
yeah.
then you don't need it anymore because
Hmm.
you've worked
Yeah,
all that hard, and now you have the
yeah.
comforts, and we deserve those
Yeah, and
comforts.
I found that it inspired me to focus and work super hard because I was just thrown into this. I threw myself into it. And then once everybody left, like after a month or two of the original year of people being here for a while, everybody left and it was me all year. And it rains.
Right.
And then to keep sane, like what did I have? We had no power. We had
No power.
no
Yeah. We
phone.
had no
We
cell.
had,
We still did. We didn't have a solar
no,
system in
no,
the community until last
until
year.
recently. And then so no power, and the truck we had was in impound most of that first year because they said, "Oh, you got to import it." So then it disappeared out of
Wait a
our
minute. So let's talk about that
yeah
for a second. Because you drove a truck.
that we bought with some of the company, the extra funds that we compiled.
Right. So we
Yeah,
talk all though is we raise money by bringing in original members that put down a sum of money. I think it was like
to a
30,000.
12,500 each
That was per quarter pod, right?
per
So it was
individual. Yeah, per
25. It
share.
was 50,000 each
A
person,
little group
and then they
with
split it up into different people. So yeah, we had like a massive
groups of
money.
four, right?
Yeah, we had a
Kinda.
massive money, and then with that we bought the land, we bought the
Two-thirds
truck.
was the land. Like yeah, the 200 and some thousand was the land, and then we had like 80,000 or 60,000. No, it was 60,000 left over,
Right.
and then part of that was the truck, 9 grand plus the imported. So we chiseled into that pretty quickly
And Brad drove a truck down
with a trailer, a boat
with
trailer.
a boat
Yeah,
from that you picked up in Baja, right?
the boat I'd already drugged to Baja years before,
So you
and
picked it up in Baja and
yeah, and kept going. Like I
okay.
drove down with our company truck to Baja, got the boat, put it on a ferry, drove to the ferry,
Great.
got
I
over the
love this
deposit lawn,
story.
drove all the way down alone, like, and yeah,
Wait.
all through all those borders.
So how long did that take to get from
It
like Oregon all the way down to
Well, I did it in
Tacotal?
some stages because Oregon bought that in Christmas, bought the truck in Christmas Day in Oregon in the snow with that crazy guy, the mechanic I took up there, and then drove it, and it took a while to get it all
Odd,
fixed up. Yeah, that
odd guy.
insane guy, and he was barefoot the whole time for in the snow.
I
Oh
know
my
that
God,
guy.
that guy is insane. And he was in straight. He called it my coffin. Like, okay, this is your coffin. Like
He was a weird dude. I know. He
He's
was
a
a weird
dark
dude.
shaman, dark shaman.
Dark
But he did
shaman.
teach me about driving trucks and shit like that.
So he
And
drove
so
it.
then, yeah, so I drove it down in stages to get to Baja, rested in Baja during I don't know when that was, February maybe or something. Got my camp there undone, got the boat packed, and then launched somewhere in February, beginning of March. And so it took me a month, I think, a little run, because I could only go 30 to 50 kilometers an hour, like with pulling the boat, passing cars, trucks, the big double remolque trucks. It was an insane. I had thought I'd done a lot of adventures in my life, and then I was like, oh wow, that was pretty serious.
And you had all the Burning Man gear.
This crap from Burning Man that seemed like it might be useful camp
I mean,
structure.
it did at
Some of it
first. I mean,
was.
those star pods, we
We
had
lived
these
in it. Yeah,
star pods, I remember. And,
yeah,
for the first
yeah.
couple years, that was just, they were structures.
Hmm.
They kept us dry.
They did. They did. Yeah,
They were a little odd to
and
like
then things like
construct and whatnot.
chainsaw and I had a couple bicycles, just random crap, just thrown in the boat. And
And you had spent time in Central America before, so
I've traveled a lot down here.
yeah, so you had a
South America.
decent understanding of the culture and
Mhm.
Spanish and
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I hope my Spanish has improved since then. But yeah, yeah, I had a basic
it
working
has, I'm
knowledge.
sure.
I hope so. Yeah, vamos a ver.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and I remember, and so Bradley, actually, I have to thank you for thinking of Vida. I mean, Steven brought me into Tacotal,
When I
but it
walked
was
you right over
actually
here.
Bradley that brought me to this
Well,
land.
because we made a camp for you. Let me think if I can figure that out. Probably up from your house a little. Oh, I'm supposed to. Oh, I'm way out of frame on that one.
Way out of frame, Bradley. It's over
Over there
there. I
somewhere.
remember. I
There,
know.
it gets hard to recognize, but it was thick brush. And then I think Adam and I were like, "Oh, humans coming in a week. Oh, let's go!" And we hacked a little road in, our little trail in, and we, oh, here's a good little camp spot under
Oh,
these
you really
trees.
prepared it
Oh
for
yeah,
me.
we made a. Oh, you wouldn't have been able to camp here if we hadn't opened
I
it up.
remembered you showing me your. I was like, I remember
There's
coming
a flat
here,
spot,
and
and
you
then
were. I was like, so
right.
where's a good place to camp? And you were like, oh, this is a
We
good
got
place
we
to
got
camp. But I
no.
didn't realize you had
Oh, we had.
prepared it
Oh
for
yeah,
me
yeah.
ahead of time.
Oh yeah, we were all like, because we were, especially back then, we were like we were afraid people were going to come and go, we're bailing on this. This is way too hard. So we were always making it easy for everyone. Those
Right.
of us who were around were like, okay, we got to make this easier. So for you, we were like, okay, make a
Uh-huh.
trail, make a flat spot.
And I think originally we all thought these were going to be temporary locations because the land, most of the land was still completely covered. And
Mhm.
so it was like we didn't really know. I mean, this land was just what was available and nearby. It was nearby
It
the
was kind of
kitchen.
nearby the main area.
Right. It was
Just,
nearby the main
yeah.
kitchen. We had a community kitchen and a community baño seco and a community shower. I think by the time I got here, there was already a shower
And that little
situation.
locking bodega that for
Uh,
second year was already built,
The
maybe.
bodega,
The bodega that.
which, well, oh, so we didn't have a composting toilet. Originally,
Yeah, drop toilet.
we had a drop toilet, like
A big hole dug in the
a
ground.
pooper, basically, a big hole in the ground. And we
Outhouse.
quickly realized that that was not the way to do things and that it was potentially going to affect our water supply down the line. So we started the composting toilets, the baños secos.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so when I came here, that was say ever call that, and we go to the river, and so where were you camped? You were up at the main area, right?
I moved around a lot. So every year or so, I kept trying, moving around in the upper Tacotal world for the first 3 years. So
And
I moved over to where Lewis had,
right,
and then that community house is
right,
now.
right, right. And so you were here. Let's see. I remember what year one or year two sometime, and you got bit by a snake,
Yeah, there's a pillow.
a terciopelo.
Yeah.
What? Tell me about that. I want to know more.
Okay, I'll try to do it quickly. Yeah, it's a long ass story, but yeah. So I was here. No one was here on the farm. The truck wasn't here. The phone was dead, or we had no power. Uh, and
You were here alone?
I was here with visitors, which was the mother of a child that is mine because of donating sperm.
She was one of our members,
Oh, she was originally, yeah, she bought shares.
and
Yeah, yeah,
she was a lesbian in a lesbian relationship and wanted to have a child, and so she
right. And
confronted
he
you
was
about
7.
having a child. He was 7 by then.
Confronted me.
In front of you, Bradley.
Yeah, good dog.
We have a proposition.
And so they were here visiting. And but 7, he's 7, so I had lived with them in the States. I had been around them a lot, like I knew them really well. But this was him coming to visit here. He
So
was
they
7 years old. It was his birthday that day.
uh-huh.
And I
Oh, it
remember,
was his birthday.
and he has an interesting history with his birthdays. Lots of things happen. So anyway, we were here. We had a whole bunch of yucca for his birthday. That's kind of what we had. Is like we were frying yucca like crazy.
That's all there was.
Yeah,
Yuca and sardines.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember. Oh yeah, so I go over to the little cabina that Diego had told me. Oh, you got to put wire or something around the base of that. And I was like, yeah, I'll get around to it someday. And he was mad because
Around the stairs, right?
yeah, around the whole base of the cabina that was up like this high, which is just a dangerous thing to walk up to a
Why did he say
structure.
that?
Well, because I have shit stored under there like boards, and then it's just a snake haven. Like as we kind of know now, things like that. Like you got an
Right.
under place. Like you probably know that under here is who knows what's under there.
Right,
Like,
and
you don't go messing around under there.
and so because of that story, I mean, that's why I have it all closed up now,
Right,
like all
exactly.
around the
We had
front.
to learn the hard way in some of these things.
So
So that was one of those. And so I went over there. I went, tink, I got hit by and I yeah. So I came back to the cabin or came back to the kitchen.
did
From
you
the
know what it
cabin.
was immediately?
Yeah, because I sat down and then
You
the
saw it.
2 puncture wounds
Mhm.
and they were weeping clear and
Ooh.
blood and
Ooh.
yeah, and then she's a midwife. Stephanie's a midwife,
Mhm.
and so she had this way like we knew things had to move fast and so she was just rattling off kind of in midwife emergency fashion, like a triage of events. And then we had heard about curcuma because the guy was here. What's his name? The friend of Stevens, the Italian guy, Caribbean.
Silvio.
Silvio was here. Yeah. So he had gone down this whole thing because we just killed the mate of that particular snake the 2 days before.
Oh.
So he was going. We were looking for it, but we couldn't find it.
So you
So it's
killed the
right over
mate,
by there.
and you knew that there was another mate.
Yes,
You
yes.
knew
It
that
was
there
that time of
the
year.
snakes
They
travel in
were
pairs.
It was rainy season. They were holing up underneath the cabin somewhere around
Is it
there.
just terciopelos that travel in pairs, or is it
Well, they nest up in pairs during the rainy season.
during the rainy season? Oh, that's really interesting.
And go hide underneath wood and stacked underneath the cabin, and
Right.
stuff like that.
And back then there wasn't a lot of
Structures
there
for
was
dryness.
nothing here, so that was the only possible, probably the best possible situation for them.
Exactly. Yeah, and so we'd learned a bunch of things about electric shock, about curcuma, eating it and putting it on. I couldn't remember, so I started eating curcuma right away and pasting it on the thing. And this is
Turmeric.
Seconds are
Curcuma
going
is
by.
turmeric.
Seconds are going by, and she's going, "Oh, okay." And we're a half-hour run from Diego's house, like a strong, fast walk at least, all the way to the nearest.
Right, and you can't do that when you get a snake bite.
Season.
When you get a snake bite, you have to
pump your.
Yeah, what you want to do is be calm. You don't want your blood to pump because then it just brings the poison faster to your heart, which is what eventually could kill you. So anyway, so you don't want to run down to Diego.
No. So we were thinking all that stuff out, and then and I just remember, we had the generator going, and so she and I was like, okay, I'll get on. She goes, okay, I'm leaving. I'll go get she just she was also deciding, should I take my son with me? Should I not? And then she decided the best is if you leave him and not go through the dark running down the hill with him. And so she leaves him with me, who's about to, who knows what, what's going to happen to me. But that was the best decision. Yeah, because I'm going to start foaming his mouth or whatever.
Oh man.
And so she runs. She just starts running, down the hill. Okay. And dark with the one flashlight.
And you're there with your son. With
no phone and no truck, no nothing. And then I started stripping. I yanked a power cord off of something and started stripping it. And I was kind of ignoring him, and he was freaking out a bit because I was sort of I was just saying stuff like, just treat it like a fire drill, like we just got to go through these motions. And I was stripping the power cord in order to plug it in to get some electricity. Well, and I was going to originally use it on the battery, because I have batteries sitting there, but I was like, that's weird things happen when you do with batteries.
So you were going to shock it because you had
because I'd heard about that. There's a whole, you can look it up online. There's controversy around it, but people in like Ecuadorian park rangers carry tasers for themselves for this very reason, because they taser them.
What is the philosophy?
They say it breaks up
the venom,
the long protein venom that's kind of long, and it screws with it.
So
it may very well have worked because, as the story goes, I'm here, right?
So yeah, you're still here. Okay.
And so I plug it in, and I remember he was freaking out because I was just giving him shit lines of like, oh yeah, whatever, not a big deal. I was scared shitless, right? I was just like my heart was just beating out of my chest. And I was trying to calm down, and then I plug it in, and I was just about to start zapping myself, and so I looked him in the eye because I didn't want him to touch me or get near. I said, okay, look, I'm gonna start electrifying myself. Don't touch me. Don't, just stay back. And I also don't know what's gonna happen to me in a bit. Like I just pause for a few seconds to say, yeah, look, so suck it up. You're gonna maybe have to be in charge. Like I didn't say suck it up. I didn't say suck it up.
You're gonna be the man of the house now. God.
And so I said, yeah, this is the facts of life, right? And as soon as I laid into him with reality, he got calm. Like, because it was me trying to just, sugarcoat something that obviously wasn't like, I was scared. He knew that.
Right.
And so as soon as I leveled with him, he got calm and like super responsible vibe. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I got my job. All right. Mm-hmm. And that was great. And then so I said, don't touch me because I'm going to be zapping myself. And all right, here we go. And then I started going near the bite and further away. And it's kind of, I working with electricity, I get shocked a lot, like messing around, but that's just like once, and it's a surprise. Mm-hmm. And then when you purposely shock, it's really weird concept. And
so not only did you just get bit by a snake,
now you're shooting myself.
You're electrocuting yourself intentionally.
Like I could feel the one that was the positive because it would trickle into the floor. Ooh. It would trickle through me, and I would know which one was the positive, and the negative didn't do that. And so then I'd put the negative on and then the positive. Wow. And then I moved up my leg. I just wanted, and I did it 3 rounds. Like I did it a bunch, And then I did it. And then he's the one that goes, I think it's probably enough. You know, because I was like, and I go, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, I think it either worked or it didn't.
And so meanwhile, Stephanie's running down the hill to get Diego.
Yeah, which is like a half-hour run, calling an ambulance, calling communicating
They called an
that with no
ambulance.
Spanish, with almost no Spanish,
Right.
communicating that what's wrong, and then that it took an hour and a half probably for them to fully arrive up there.
With an ambulance.
Yeah, something, maybe 2 hours.
Was it a 4x4 ambulance?
Yeah, four by
It
four
had to
Jeep,
be.
4x4 Jeep, not an ambulance.
Okay.
Like they just brought themselves
Right.
equipment, and then and also a taxi showed up. Remember Pablo? That's how I got to know Pablo,
Pablo.
the
Oh,
taxi
yeah.
driver. Yeah, who died of COVID perhaps like a couple
Right,
years
right,
ago.
right,
Yeah.
right, right. So what happened? So when they arrived, what did they say? You were fine?
Well, yeah, and so what happened is I zapped myself a bunch. Him and I just laid down and chilled out, and we both conked out because it was we just slept on the floor of the kitchen, and then they showed up all of a sudden, but that was a long time later, a while later. They drew a circle around my wound, to just see if things changed on it. They look at me in the eye, and I asked the lady what she was expecting, and she said like, oh, like you would be writhing and like not, like blood coming out your nose, maybe, like all kinds of shit,
Right, because it had been at this point like an hour and a half
yeah, it was either, and
after you bit.
and my vision had and I don't know if it's stress or something else, but my vision was closing into tunnel vision.
Uh-huh.
And I was under so much stress
Uh-huh.
that I didn't know if this is just but when I zapped myself, it was clearing. Each time I was zapping myself, it was clearing
Oh,
my
interesting.
vision, which is, I don't know, an odd side
Wow.
effect thing. Yeah. So anyway,
Okay, wow.
that was just one story among many.
Right, and
There's many.
I've heard you
Yeah.
have other snake stories. We're
Yeah.
gonna have to. I think we should save that for another episode because
one snake story at a time. I
Okay.
get stressed out talking about it almost.
Do you?
I mean, if I get sweating right now, yeah, like it brings up a kind of,
Right.
yeah, like it was and I have a whole different relationship with those snakes now. I
Right.
feel pretty relaxed in general. Yeah.
Okay, so now years later. Okay, so you fast forward a little bit. Bradley had homesteaded various parts of the land, like kind of ended up settling
to
down
where
in
the lots
Mariposa,
where
which was
it's
kind of lower down in the
15
land.
minutes from here.
Yeah,
Like a
15-minute
long walk.
walk down in like a bit of a like a bowl, kind of like towards the river, kind of where the water kind of comes down and heads close to the river, which there was a lot of snakes down there, obviously.
Yeah,
like back.
I was living in it. Yeah.
And this is like, I mean, I notice there's less snake deer.
We don't see them. Yeah.
We barely see
They
them.
have our established trails. They have their established places. They don't
Right.
necessarily want to live right on top of us.
Right. It's so rare that I run into a snake
You
at all.
probably have some under your house somewhere, and they go off that way to come and go, or who knows?
Over there. Kriya actually occasionally will
and you
kill a
live with cats,
terciopelo.
too. You live with cats.
That's the other thing is the cats we have. Like they kill the rats. The rats are the food for the terciopelos. And also Kriya, like I was saying, she showed up here a couple times with a dead terciopelo. Like
Wow.
Yeah,
they're a bit faster. I've seen some stuff on YouTube. Cats are just a bit faster than snakes.
Okay, so you're down in Mariposa, in the area of Mariposa, homesteading down there, and then
Year 3, I think,
but now you're across the river. You're in La Libertad,
directly across the river from that part of Tacotal. Yeah.
And how did that kind of come about? How did you?
That's
not a part of Tacotal. That's a separate land.
Yeah, it's separate. That came about over years. I mean, imagine I spent at least 10 years or a little more developing Mariposa, the 4 lots of that area, which is a hectare. And then that became a little paradise down there, a little bit separate from Tacotal in some ways because way far over there. Because I'm kind of a pioneer type person who's a little bit hermity, and as things people started arriving, I was like, oh, I think I should be way on the far side of the way. And so I was pretty happy down there, just developing that and working really hard in the summer in the States. Like I go back in the winter here for a few months, work really hard with carpentry, get a little paycheck on that, come down here, spend it on materials, run it down, and you spend it right away on materials and then run out of food working here. Like I was always just bare minimum back then,
Right, yeah, money, like you make your money and use it till it's gone and then go back and earn more. I was very
even
similar.
run out of food and
very similar in those
rice
days.
and beans. Okay, well, good thing my plane ticket's happening.
Right.
Yeah, and so that was at least a decade and a little more, and so that was just incremental improvements down there, incremental change. Me doing a lot of it, I'd hire guys like 6 days a year to help me chop and stuff
Hmm.
like that, and that, much more. Uh, Built a little cabin down there. Let's just move forward, inching along. I mostly dealt with the paths and the gardens and the
You're
pools.
talking about Mariposa right now.
Mariposa, right?
Okay.
Okay, and then I'll switch. So, so then that was just inching along, and then so a few things happened. One is that Tacotal at that point, maybe like, well, I guess that's 4 years, 4 or 5 years ago now. It was started to be like we went through a stagnation phase where it was you up here developing this really well, Adam in between us halfway,
Hmm.
or closer to me over there with his little hillside thing, and the other houses were built by some people, little cabins they had left because they'd all had kids. Rosa,
Right.
Gustavo, Chris and Gina,
It was just pretty much you, me, and Adam here.
Gretchen and Jonah. Everybody had left really, so
Right.
it's like this the low energy point of Taco Tal. So that was happening around the time of also so like 3 or so years ago, 4 years ago, my my parents passed away. Like first my dad and then my mom, and I didn't really think I was going to get anything like that.
The
Having
same year.
a couple years apart, but
Uh-huh.
it was this progression.
Right.
And then my mom passed away, and then I didn't really realize because we weren't wealthy people at all. They were just homesteading in Alaska on land, and
Hmm.
but they didn't, were never in debt, and so they did have something to pass on to us, and
Hmm.
we divided between the three kids. And
Hmm.
there was something, that they sold the house and the da 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 and the car and whatever boat da da, and so
So you got
I had an
inheritance.
inheritance for the first time in my life.
Hmm.
I had money ahead, and I also, to honor them and not be an idiot and eat it all in sushi and travels or something, I wanted to.
I,
I really had the
Sushi's
desire
pretty
to
good.
quickly put it back into land.
Hmm.
And I considered, like, oh, I could invest heavily in Tacotal, but I was also little bit like, well, I don't know about that because yeah. And so, but I had to cross that land
You were
so many
feeling
times.
stagnant with
I was so
Tacotal.
that was a low point for me, and a low point maybe even for Tacotal, but it was a low
Right.
point in my
Yeah,
involvement.
for sure.
And so I was like, yeah, less likely to want to put it in Tacotal at that moment or buy more lots or
Hmm.
whatever. And it didn't seem what I wanted. And what I really appealed to me was having some independence or not all
Hmm.
my eggs in that basket. And I had crossed Luis Angel, my neighbor's land, across the river. I would cross the river because for me, I'm so close to that Libertad Road by crossing the
Right.
river and up that property that I was like, oh, this is actually the easiest way for me to get to town and back.
Right. And it
And
was a paved road.
yeah, it was getting paved.
Or
It was kind of got paved
you
out.
didn't need a 4x4 to get over
No,
there. So you could
exactly.
get a regular
To
taxi up
regular
there.
taxi,
Whereas
exactly.
this
I used to
Taco
walk to
Road,
town and then taxi back with groceries and
right, in the
stuff like
Taco
that.
Tal Road, it's further walk and you need a 4x4
Oh yeah,
taxi,
much more
which is
isolated
cost more.
actually over
Right,
there.
right,
Though there's a crossing of the river.
right.
And so I crossed that land a lot and looked at it and thought, this is amazing. It's got a low plateau by the river. It's got a upper one. I was like, this is pretty cool. And then all of a sudden I had the ability. So I started conversations 3 or so years ago with Luis Angel, and he wasn't really interested in selling it other than I talked to him, and he had his corral in one corner, and I
Hmm.
was like, he was kind of stuck on that, and I was like,
He had
look at
cows on it.
think of the monies we're talking about here, the amount of money
You
you could
talk,
like
you,
buy, you could like hire guys to just rebuild your thing right over there. And he goes, oh yeah, and the backhoe work, and I even helped with some backhoe work on
you
his
talked
estate.
him into it.
I talked to him, especially
That's
the moving of
interesting.
his little corral, because he was kind of attached to where he had his corral. I go, like, and sure enough, even before the deal was signed, he tore down the corral, moved it over in like a week,
Yeah,
rebuilt it, and he was like, oh yeah, like that was his sticking point. And so that
interesting.
worked. And then we made a deal that was pretty good for him actually, because he's a hard driving bargain guy, man.
Uh,
He's a landowner that kind of a campesino rough and tumble guy.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's kind of, we call him like the guardian of the valley. And they actually built my house. Him and his father
oh
built,
yeah.
they were the ones who I hired when they built my house. They would show up on horseback and he was an older guy back then. And so anyways, so he had this land available and you bought it. And so what are you doing there now?
And so then I started developing. I took part of the money and bought it, and then during COVID hit, and I had 7 guys that didn't want to go back to Nicaragua. They were like, "Oh, Nicaragua's falling apart," and I had still had a little money in the bank at that point, and I was like, "Oh boy," and they were like, "We'd really like to stay and keep working and do projects," and I was like, "Okay, like what's the point of having this land just letting it sit here and kind of slow develop like I had the other side?" So I was like, let's do this.
You
So
just
I had
went all in.
7 guys every day, which is a paycheck. Like that's a chunk of change every
Sure.
week. Boom, boom, boom. But we just kept knocking. We got the toilet house down. We got the kitchen, and we got the. And I was also working on the parking and the in an entry drive,
Mhm.
and planting it like crazy. And so it
Mhm.
went, and building a staircase down to the river.
Yeah, it went
And
up quick.
went up, yeah, because
Even.
I knew I had funds for the first time ever,
Mhm.
and B, I was confident and comfortable. I had watched the land. I had done all that due diligence of really observing and really I like knew exactly what I wanted to do.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't like the things I'd done over here at Tacotal were slow and real. I was novice so much, so I didn't want to screw up the land or make big mistakes with
Mhm.
trees and plants and stuff like that.
So
So,
you learned your lesson, you're installing
mhm.
it, and now what's the plan? Like
Oh, what do I do over
yeah,
there?
well, no, like what's your vision? Yeah, like
Well,
what is Machu
it's
Campo?
a little bit like a mirror of your place.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we
You're
do.
a farm that has, you're concentrating on growing food and having that function, and then you supplement that by having guests
Mhm.
and people, and I have a cabin that's almost getting closer to being done, and
Nice.
so I'll be on your par soon with the cabin vibe,
And you'll be
that which means having rainy
rental
season rental,
right.
which is amazing
Rental
because
income.
it pays the bills. Cause I have bills over there now. I have a
Right.
little property tax, and I have internet now
Right.
because guests need that apparently.
And if you've
Yeah,
not visited Brad's, this Machu Campo is just beautiful. And during the summer, during the dry season,
I have
he's
the
got
nine glamping tents up
glamping tents
by the river. Yeah,
right on the river, beautifully set up, and a nice like community kitchen vibe space. And you're hosting retreats.
yeah.
We kind of like, yeah, we're kind of doing
We
something
switch it
similar.
with Sarah.
Yeah.
She gives you the herbalism, and I do
Uh-huh.
the permaculture. She's very fair that way.
Yes, sir.
Almost.
We had Sarah was our first guest, so do you have like a website or a way people can follow you? Or
Instagram Machu Campo.
MachuCampo?
Machu Campo,
Yeah,
whatever, if that was
Machu
that.
Campo. Machu Campo.
At whatever.
Yeah,
At
on
Machu
Instagram
Campo.
at
Yeah.
Machu Campo.
Yeah.
So, well, Brad, this is
Oh,
amazing. You're like the kind of person I could talk to for literally hours, and we have, and we will.
and I can talk
Hopefully,
rappers.
we'll have you
Yeah.
back on again because I know you have so many stories. But I think we're at the end of our
Okay.
time. So thank you so much for coming
All right.
and for your I love you, man.
Love you too.
Yeah.
Good to be up here.
All right,
Thanks.
everybody. Thanks so much. Follow La Vida Verde podcast on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can find us everywhere, all over the world. And also, we have a Patreon set up now. If you want to support this vision, you want to support these conversations, support our farm. We'd love for you to follow us on Patreon, La Vida Verde podcast. And follow us on Instagram, Finca_Vida_Verde. We have a Facebook, all those things. Anyways, I'm Matthew Human. This is Bradley Scott Farmer. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Okay.